All right, I'm going to give you a look at the state of the race. And again, that was before that bombshell dropped here. But nonetheless, let me give you a snapshot of where we were when the day started. ABC News Washington Post poll tracking showed Hillary with just a 4-point lead nationally. I say just because last weekend her lead double digits. Other polls have it a little bit bigger, but you get the idea here that things narrowing. However, when you look at the swing states, things are looking a bit better for Hillary. As Andrew mentioned, Georgia and Iowa, by the way, virtually tied, and those are traditionally red states. That according to this Quinnipiac poll. Trump's lead in both of those states, it's all but evaporated, and Clinton has a 4-point lead in North Carolina. She's up by double digits in Virginia. But all of these polls could be even closer than that. Politico surveyed Republican insiders, and more than 7 in 10 say the polls understate support for Trump because many people just don't want to admit that they're going to actually vote for the guy. Then there is the early vote. Around 14 million people have already cast their ballots, and several pivotal states have seen more registered Democrats than Republicans hit the polls. States including Colorado, North Carolina, Ohio, Nevada, Virginia, and Wisconsin. But more Republicans voted in Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. So I've thrown a whole lot of numbers at you, but at the end of the day, Michael, when you look at, as a guy who's been involved in campaigns and has consulted folks, what are the numbers that give you the best idea? And do internal polls tend to be a lot better than the polls that even prominent newspapers give us?
Internal polls are always more reliable because you could pay for a larger sample and you could target and you could overrepresent certain communities to match what you expect to be turnout. But there is a lot of guesswork involved. And I do believe, like we saw, interestingly, on opposite sides of the issue, but for Scotland to stay in the UK, and then for the UK to leave the EU, and then for the peace deal in Colombia that was narrowly rejected, the passion is on one side and people are talking about it. So there are no secret Hillary supporters. There are secret Trump supporters. Just like there were people who didn't want to offend their neighbors, all the energy was on leave Scotland, leaving the EU.
But wasn't this giant misnomer that, oh my God, they got it all wrong? People actually said it was almost a dead heat going into the Brexit vote here, and they actually got it right, the polls. That as much as we love to say the polls don't know, historically, aren't they more right than wrong?
Trump prevails if voters who, and we talked about this last week, if voters who registered 10, 12 years ago but really aren't reliable voters since come out west coast of Florida, outside Tallahassee, Tampa, Orlando, places like that, western Pennsylvania, because they're not getting called. They're not getting polled. Where Hillary needs to run up the numbers in urban areas, those folks are participating in polls. And it's also a big deal. You get a poll, you want to talk about it. The folks who Trump is banking on to come out aren't represented heavily in these polls.
Scott, how much does get out the vote matter? And I ask that because I've seen some staggering numbers of the differentials of ground games that Hillary has. And by the way, she's got the national party apparatus to help her. Historically, they always help out but the RNC, at least before this came out, they're putting no resources behind him. They're just trying to get their guys reelected.
They are in their U.S. Senate races, though.
In the Senate races.
So there's going to be bottom up.
But I'm saying not for Trump. Yes, but that presumes that there's bottom up. To this point, how much does that matter, ground game?
Oh, it's tremendously important. It can make the difference in any election.
Give an idea to the audience which kinds of people it makes the biggest difference for. Seniors and stuff? Or?
Yeah, people who might not vote, people who are frustrated. I mean, and that's one of the things that Hillary has. She has a ground game second to none here across the country, and he doesn't. He just doesn't. He's got that group of people who are going to come out anyway, no matter what. But she's got a tremendous ground game. And this includes, by the way, calling, 12, 15 hours calling people to make sure you voted 3 years ago, but you haven't voted 2 years, come on out and vote. I mean, those kinds of things. Busting people if you have to. I know we used to bust people, at least my opponents did.
Well, let me just say, tomorrow, I have rented a bus with my own money. I'm taking 30 people from my house to Allentown, Pennsylvania, 30 people who are my supporters from Yonkers who want to go and knock on doors for Hillary. It's the second time I've gone to Allentown. I went before, and the kind of voters that we talked to, or that I talked to, largely in Spanish, I would say, were voters who have registered but have voted intermittently, are not, they got a lot on their plate other than the national election, but our job there was to remind them how important this election was. And the organization at the Clinton headquarters there was top of the line, GOTV and voter identification. They had buses coming in from all over going to this portion of Pennsylvania, which is an extremely important county for
It
Hillary.
is, that's very revealing because it shows you how organized they are. And
Very.
to Michael's point, I mean, one of the reasons why Trump, because he lost the establishment Republicans, I call them, that he lost his ground game. I
Totally
mean,
agree.
just totally lost it.
And the bridges he bombed basically within his own party for help here. That's why nobody, forget it being a surrogate, they can turn out. Like, if Rick Perry's your friend, he'll go out of his way to help you in Texas here. If Lindsey Graham, you want to win South Carolina, he's got at least some infrastructure to do this. And Marco Rubio in Florida, I mean, there's ways that people can help more than just saying, I endorse so-and-so, right?
Yep.
I was just going to point out that the voters that Shelley's group is getting to the polls probably have not been included in the polling, hence secret Hillary voters that you were saying didn't exist before.
No,
Michael.
they're just not-
And
they're not-
there's also probably plenty of Republican women who are not announcing that they're voting for Hillary, but may do so anyway.
Well, we saw that for Hillary in her Senate race, and I know that I've said this here. There were more votes for Hillary in certain election districts in Massapequa than there are registered Democrats. And the only thing we could extrapolate from that is Republican women
And can I
voted
just
for her.
add to that, that again, this week I've spent the week, because I have an election, going to senior centers in Yonkers and meeting lots of Republicans, women and men, who are voting for Hillary and are not, including old school Republican, down the line Republicans, who are going to vote Republican except
Do
skip
these
Trump.
secret Trump voters compensate for the shortfall in evangelical Christians we're reading about that just can't bring themselves to vote for Trump, or Romney, McCain establishment Republicans?
You know, Don,
Probably not.
no matter what, today was a bad day for Hillary, and it could be the beginning of a very bad week, or 11 days for Hillary, depending on what comes out next. But the only silver lining I think that can come out of it is if there was any complacency by the Clinton supporters that said, we got this thing locked up here, let's worry about the Senate races and everything else. Now they know, if you're a Democrat in Pennsylvania, you better vote here, because the cycle just went against you. Comparatively, I also think that, you know, there's probably, if they had some October surprises up their own sleeve, and there were some folks who said this might have been coming down. I didn't know this was coming down, but I heard today, I saw Bernstein was saying, he was speaking to some folks here, that there could have been, this was being rumored to come out of Justice, that there's got to be some more stuff they've got on Trump. Plus, they got $100 million more dollars to spend.
She has a lot more money than Trump has. That's a major advantage for her. The ground game, major advantage for her. Good luck in Allentown tomorrow. I agree with you 1,000%. Core Democratic constituencies now are going to say to themselves, this is, or you should say to yourself, this is no joke, and she could lose. So African
And you think
Americans.
there's more dirt that's going to come out on Trump they've been holding?
I think there's going to be more dirt on both of them, but especially on Trump, and it is very scary. And I'm trying to remain objective. It's very scary to think about the fact that this guy could be the next president of the United States. I mean, think about that for a second, and the appointments and everything else that comes with that, and just think about that. So, Richard, I just want to say I agree with you. So, black votes, hopefully now they will say, listen, our lives are on the line. We have got to get out and vote, because this thing is going to be that close, possibly.
But I think this news is going to change those marginal voters
It will.
who are not sure,
It will.
who are mostly anti-Trump, which is why they went to Hillary
They
to
might
begin
just
with.
stay home, right?
They stay home. It's going to make a big difference.
So saith the man in the pumpkin tie. All right, coming up next, some Trump supporters, they're warning they will start a revolt. And that's not me play on words here. That's what they're saying, a revolution if their guy doesn't win. Wait till you hear what these folks are saying.